An ABC News brief. Now from Washington, Michelle Norris.
Good evening. Bosnian Serbs have taken several United Nations peacekeepers hostage, using them as human shields against further NATO airstrikes. A Senate committee today recommended Dr. Henry Foster's confirmation for Surgeon General after 2 Republicans joined Democrats in supporting the embattled nominee. Next, 2020 tests the quality of the air you breathe on commercial airlines. That's News Brief.
Today we're at the Eagle Test Drive sale along with Vicki Edmondson.
I'm just checking out this Talon deal. The commute is really getting to me in my Acura.
I could see you in an Eagle Talon.
Yeah, I could too. 140 horses, double wishbone suspension.
Well, aren't we speedy?
Woo! This Talon deal is unbelievable.
So's the traffic out there.
Test drive a Talon at your local Eagle dealer.
We all have different ways of communicating our friendship. And when we can't do it in person, we usually do it over the phone. GTE created Between Friends, a calling plan that offers you 60 minutes of GTE long distance for only $6.25 a month. It's not just a plan tailored around your needs, it's tailored around your friends' needs as well. To find out more, just give us a call.
The race is on for spectacular deals on every new Dodge in stock. Current owners get up to $23.60 off 95 Dodge Caravans, including air at no extra charge. Or get a great deal on Dodge Dakota and Dodge Ram, the pickups with higher resale than Ford, Chevy, or GMC. So get to your Dodge dealer today, because with deals this big, these Dodges will be going fast.
Susan Parsons, weekdays at 5 on News Channel 36.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Dowd.
And I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
From ABC News, around the world and into your home, the stories that touch your life. With Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters, this is 2020. Tonight, a traveler's advisory. Is the cabin air you breathe hazardous to your health?
Your eyes hurt. You might have sneezing episodes. Might have coughing and congestion.
The symptoms that plague passengers. Where do they come from?
It's just common sense. It's about fresh air.
We commissioned independent experts. They took samples, ran tests, checked the air on every major U.S. airline.
We can pick up contaminants or indicators of that throughout the plane.
Dr. Timothy Johnson with a 2020 investigation. Is it enough to make you sick? The air up there. And a story that will rock the soul of every patriotic American.
I arrived in Vietnam on the morning of May 1st, 1965.
Their war stories are haunting. Their medals impressive. But believe it or not, these men are fakes.
I knew every team member, and he wasn't there.
In speeches, on TV, in books, they lie about their military records.
You, sir, are trying to cash in on the heroics of men who fought and died.
A Tom Gerald expose. Men who dare to steal the bravery of those who really made the sacrifice. It's the ultimate disgrace. Plus, he was in the thick of it, on the field and off. Celebrated umpire Steve Palermo, shot when he tried to stop a mugger. Doctors said he would never walk again. Will his agonizing struggle prove them wrong?
There are very few people who honestly, actually believe that I'll return to the baseball field.
Bob Brown, with an inspiring story of true grit. Umpire Steve Palermo. Tragedy took him out of the big leagues. Now, he's in a league of his own. Those stories tonight, May 26, 1995, after this brief message.
Get rid of your copier, printer, fax, and scanner.
Get the new Lita AF1000. It does it all in 2 square feet.
This isn't some blazing spot on the equator. It's the Dutch Boy Paint Testing Facility, where we make sure our exterior house paints resist fading and peeling. It's one of 77 tests we do, so you can give your home the lasting look of Dutch Boy.
Were things any easier for him? Was providing for a family simpler back then? Now there's so much information, decisions are tougher. Strange. I grew up not wanting to walk in his footsteps. Now I only wish I could.
Things are more complex. Ask a Merrill Lynch financial consultant who can help with a plan and more ways to make the plan work than anyone else. The difference is planning. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
We begin with a health issue that has so concerned the public that Congress has gotten involved. The issue is the safety of airplane air. Is the air you're breathing inside the cabin hazardous to your health? The government has ordered a 5-year study to find out, but last year, 2020, commissioned its own survey. And tonight we bring you those results again.
Have you ever wondered why you seem to come down with something almost every time you fly? The findings of our survey might provide an answer. As Dr. Timothy Johnson reported then, like it or not, you're sharing more than a destination with the other passengers on your flight.
John Dakota, this is 29. Okay, it's 29. Let's do the before takeoff checklist.
Please be sure that all carry-on items are placed under the seat in front of you, and that your
214, 216, 214.
Observe the no smoking, fasten seatbelt signs at all times when they are
I
illuminated.
hear passengers talk about it more. They don't feel good. They're wondering if it's the air in the cabin.
Pollutants that come out of the chemicals in the toilet, that off-gas from the seats, the things that come out of the ovens. I mean, it is a very unhealthy environment.
During the past decade, complaints about the quality of air in airplanes have been stacking up like jets at the nation's busiest airports. Many passengers get off flights complaining of headaches and fatigue and nasal congestion, symptoms they attribute to their flying experience. Critics say the problem stems back to the oil crisis of the 1970s, which spurred manufacturers to build planes that use less fuel. In fact, they developed ventilation systems that used less fuel but also took in less fresh air. That, says the critics, has affected air quality. Throughout the debate, the flight attendants have been the most vocal in their complaints about air quality. Pam Touchstone has been a flight attendant for more than 10 years. She remembers one time when she and the other attendants on her flight were overcome, gasping for breath.
We found ourselves, 6 out of 7 flight attendants, sitting down on a plane full of passengers, unable to work, unable to have any presence out in the aisle until we landed, until we made a stop.
Congressman Peter DeFazio, a frequent flyer, is convinced that the air in airline cabins is not fit to breathe. DeFazio makes regular coast-to-coast trips from Washington, D.C. to Oregon, his home state.
I've had the sinus problems. I've had the headaches. I get sick as frequently as any other frequent flyer. You sit next to someone who's sick, you get sick. You hear someone 2 rows behind you coughing and snorting, you're pretty likely to get sick. They're putting that into the system. It's an extraordinarily unhealthy environment.
The debate about cabin air quality intensified last year when the Centers for Disease Control reported they were investigating 4 different flights to determine the possibility of transmitting TB on airplanes.
Half of their space was storage.
One case involves California management consultant Bob Kahn. He and his wife Patty were on a plane with a passenger who was later diagnosed with contagious tuberculosis. After the flight, Patty tested negative, but Bob tested positive. Now Bob takes a daily drug regimen to try to kill the tuberculosis bacteria.
And so I take it in the morning, and I'm taking it 5 days a week.
The San Francisco Department of Health is also now investigating the possibility that Mr. Kahn and other passengers got TB on the flight.
I deal with statistics, and when 10 out of 25 people on a particular flight tested positive for tuberculosis, that's not a random chance.
The plane that the Kahns flew, the MD-80, is part of a new generation of aircraft which filters and recirculates up to 50% of the cabin air, unlike older aircraft which utilized 100% fresh air. This new ventilation system which uses recirculated air is at the center of the debate about cabin air quality. The Director of Air Safety and Health for the Association of Flight Attendants is Chris Witkowski.
When we had most planes with 100% fresh air, the air used to come in almost totally clean and then be exhausted every 3 minutes. Today, with the 50% fresh air and 50% recycled air, the plane isn't completely changed until approximately 7 minutes or even longer in some cases. So you have air that's has less quality to begin with, it's got more contaminants, and it stays in the plane longer.
Well, the air travels from the top of the airplane.
But airline industry experts say recirculated air works just fine. Michael Rio is Vice President of Engineering for the Air Transport Association, a trade association representing all the airlines.
We certainly don't want people to believe that we're trying to squeeze another nickel out of everybody's wallet just because we found out a way to make the airplane use less air. So what they've done is they developed a system still maintaining, in fact, improving the ventilation flow to each passenger that's sitting in the airplane.
The recirculated air system relies on sophisticated filters to trap air contaminants. Critics charge that airlines don't replace the filters often enough, but the Air Transport Association says airlines strictly follow manufacturers' guidelines for filter maintenance. So, does cabin air pose a threat to health? Does the use of recirculated air foster an environment in which bacteria or viruses are more easily transmitted? To date, the only scientific study of airplane air quality has been done by the Department of Transportation in 1989. That study confirmed that smoking was indeed a health hazard. But many experts say the DOT study did not adequately study such things as pollutants or germ transmission or inadequate ventilation as possible health threats. To begin to get some answers to these questions, 2020 commissioned an independent survey.
+5 now.
The 2020 survey was led by Dr. John Spengler, professor of environmental health at the Harvard School of Public Health, and by Dr. Harriet Burge, associate professor of environmental microbiology, also at Harvard. Both are internationally known experts, each having more than 20 years studying environmental air quality and airborne microbes.
Within 15 seconds of both my watch and the IQ.
The survey began 2 months ago with Drs. Spengler and Burge preparing Harvard research engineer Tom Dumyan and research assistant Carrie Dahlstrom to collect the data on the airplane.
We can just leave them here.
Dumyan and Dahlstrom set out to collect data in 11 categories, including such things as carbon dioxide, noise levels, organic compounds, as well as samples of dust to be tested for contaminants, something that has never been tested before in airplanes.
Got a computer in here?
The testing was done without the knowledge of the airline industry. Dumyan and Dahlstrom conducted extensive tests during boarding and while in flight. They also vacuumed up samples during deplaning.
14 out of your seat, sir.
Thank you.
In all, they flew on every major domestic airline, 22 flights in 10 different aircraft models. They sat in the front and rear of coach sections on flights with an average passenger load of nearly 80%.
When the plane actually is in cruise, they're staying pretty consistently around 1,500.
When Drs. Spengler and Burge analyzed the data, they found some surprises. For example, they found high levels of carbon dioxide. These levels indicate inadequate ventilation and may be the cause of symptoms like fatigue and headaches and sinus problems. Would these levels be a particular concern to the workers on the plane, the pilots or the attendants?
The pilots probably aren't experiencing the same levels at all, considering that they have different ventilation systems. I would expect they would be of considerable concern to the flight attendants.
The Harvard survey's biggest surprise is bad news for people with asthma and allergies. Mites, minute disease-causing bugs, were found in dust samples collected from seats and carpets. The levels were high enough to indicate that mites had nested, possibly settling in permanently. And they found extensive evidence of cat allergens presumably brought on by passengers. Allergens are substances that can trigger allergic reactions.
Your eyes hurt, you might have sneezing episodes, might have coughing and congestion. And I think this is a very important finding that has never been mentioned before.
The dust samples also revealed relatively high levels of endotoxins, which are substances found in the cell walls of certain bacteria. They are potentially toxic substances never before linked to airplanes. The Harvard researchers think these may be a cause of the dry eye and scratchy throat symptoms suffered by many air travelers.
My expectation would be that if we continued to sample, we would, the average would be higher in airplanes than in house dust, which is very, very surprising.
We've often heard complaints from flight attendants about their malaise, their symptoms of eye irritation, throat, respiratory problems. And this certainly is a biological entity that can contribute to that or cause that. So I think it warrants a further investigation.
The Harvard scientists paid particular attention to the way in which air traveled inside the plane. They wanted to know if passengers seated in the back of the cabin are susceptible to the germs of those in the front of the plane. Michael Rio of the Air Transport Association says that's not possible because the airflow in a plane is top to bottom, not front to back.
If you're talking about 2 rows back or 2 rows up, you wouldn't have any effect at all as far as a forward and aft movement.
So if air comes from top to bottom but doesn't move back and forth, you're not going to get exposed to the breathing of a person several rows back or several rows in front?
That's correct. Somebody in row 33 wouldn't be affected by someone in row 2 or even row 30.
But the Harvard scientists say that is not true. They conducted a special ventilation test.
I think we've demonstrated with beyond a doubt that we can pick up contaminants or indicators of that throughout the plane. So that if it were released in seat 16, in seat 28, you're going to see part of that. Seat 35, you're going to see part of that.
What about tuberculosis, something that has been of great concern to the public?
Tuberculosis is not a disease that can be controlled by ventilation. And there's actually really quite good data in the literature to indicate that no amount of ventilation will prevent tuberculosis transmission.
So what is the bottom line? Even though there are no final answers, this survey does identify potential explanations for some of the common complaints from flyers, such as nasal congestion, eye and throat irritation, and fatigue. Overall, would you describe airplane air quality as, quote, safe?
I don't think I would ever categorically say this is a safe environment. It's very worrisome. It worries me when I hear people doing that because you can't ever know that.
And until this problem is thoroughly examined, people like Pam Touchstone worry that their health may be compromised.
This is easily dismissed because there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of things going on out there that attribute to this problem. But it's very simple, and it's just common sense. It's about fresh air.
Tim, it's easy to feel a little trapped in that situation. And is there anything a passenger can do to minimize his risk?
Well, if you really feel badly, you might complain and see if they will change the air ventilation pattern, turn it up. Drinking fluids is always helpful to humidify your own air. And if you have asthma, you might want to bring an inhaler with you on the plane in case you run into some breathing problems.
Haven't they reported at least one case of tuberculosis transmitted on a flight?
Yes, this past March, the CDC did verify that there was a flight, I think it was from Chicago to Honolulu, in which one passenger may have transmitted TB to 4 other passengers who were sitting close by. Again, as we said in the piece, it's not to be blamed on ventilation. You can get TB in any closed environment if you sit close enough and long enough to a person who's coughing and actively transmitting the germ. That's apparently what happened on this flight.
Well, you can bring your own lunch on an airplane, and short of full scuba gear, you can't bring your own air. That's right. A fact. Thank you, Tim. And stick around, would you? Toward the end of the program, we'll talk to you a little bit about sunlight.
Okay.
It's very important this time of year.
Carry your own lunch and your own oxygen, huh? Well, next, they are would-be heroes seeking the glory of those we honor this Memorial Day weekend. But the tales of heroism these veterans spin are fiction. How could they do it? Tom Jarrell's investigation of soldiers caught in the ultimate disgrace after this.
I should paint the shed. No hurry. I ought to paint the front door. No rush. I could paint the fence. Whenever.
It's True Values Can't Wait for Summertime Memorial Day sale. Starting May 25th, find big savings like Exo Rust Spray Paint Bonus Twin Pack, only $4.99. True Test Easy Color Flat Interior, only $8.99. And Premium Weatherall Flat Exterior, only $13.99. But hurry, sale ends Monday. It's through. Help is just around the corner.
As long as there are feather beds and rising moons, as long as there are old friends and new stories, As long as there are steady hands and mugs to keep them warm, you'll find Maxwell House Decaffeinated. Original, rich French roast, and smooth Sanka. As long as great taste is all you want, Maxwell House Decaf will always be good to the last drop.
There's a new spirit at Pizza Hut.
Welcome, living or non-living.
Should have ordered Diet Pepsi, kid. Now order any pizza or Pepsi and get a glow-in-the-dark hand puppet from the movie Casper. Only $1.49. Dine-in, carry-out, or delivery.
Boo! They didn't do anything, so did you. You're welcome, stuff were made of Pizza Hut.
Here's why the Sarches are another Tylenol extended relief family.
I get headaches from stress on the job. That's my story. The pain would make me just want to go home and hide. Now I get relief that lasts my entire workday.
Now Christine uses Tylenol extended relief with this unique bi-layer caplet. One layer of strong relief to attack the pain quickly, and one layer to make sure that strong relief lasts.
Extended relief. It does the job.
Tylenol extended relief. Strong relief right away. Strong relief the whole day.
Surprise! You may have instantly won one of 15 all-new Chevrolet Monte Carlos. Or one of over 20,000 other great prizes. It's all part of the Victory Lap Instant Win Sweepstakes. Just look inside specially marked boxes of Kellogg's Cornflakes cereal to see if you've won.
Sunday, everyone loves it when there's a full hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, because it's almost impossible to do something stupid when you're sitting down watching TV, right? Then, radical terrorists infiltrate the military and steal a killer satellite. But when Lois and Clark zero in on the plot, they become the targets. Lois and Clark, after video, Sunday on ABC.
Start your summer with Jet Fahey. Bang! The Marshal moves to Mondays, starting this Monday, Memorial Day. Then, he's a mystery writer whose words are coming to life. Someone's committing the crime he wrote page by page.
You made a monster out of me.
Roger Moore and Malcolm McDowell. 007 never had it this tough. The Man Who Wouldn't Die, Monday on ABC.
Well, it is a notable year, the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II, and a special weekend as the nation prepares to honor its war heroes. So it seemed right to bring back Tom Jarrell's investigation of some men who did the unthinkable. They lied about their military service, placing themselves among the ranks of America's most valiant patriots, even though they don't belong there. And they are veterans, which makes their deception even more incomprehensible. Their stories will outrage anyone who cares about this country and those who serve it.
This man founded a chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America in upstate New York.
We thank you for protecting us who are still here, Lord, that we could be here.
David Gulf is not disgracing the flag. He's burning old and damaged flags in a Memorial Day tribute to men who never returned from Vietnam, his comrades in arms. And halfway across the country at another Memorial Day ceremony, the president of the Vietnam Veterans Dallas chapter greets the commander of troops in Vietnam, General William Westmoreland. While fighting for veterans' rights, John Woods has claimed he suffered from exposure to the defoliant Agent Orange used in Vietnam.
Hi, how you doing, General?
David Gulf said he was a war hero. A congressman presented Gulf with the Army's second highest award for valor, the Distinguished Service Cross. But the fact of the matter is, neither Gulf nor Woods ever set foot as a serviceman in Vietnam. How do we know? This man, B.G. Burkett, has made a second career hunting phony veterans.
Why do people like this tell stories like this?
I think all of us have a need to be accepted as a hero to somebody. And many of us don't have what it takes to be a hero, and therefore we have to manufacture it.
Burkett did serve in Vietnam and was awarded a Bronze Star. Years after the war, he became fed up with the negative stereotyping of the Vietnam vet as a burned-out victim.
He's alcoholic, he's unemployed or unemployable, he's suicidal. He basically can't function very well in society.
It's an image perpetuated in part by Hollywood, like the emotionally scarred Vietnam veteran, played here by John Lithgow, always ready to explode.
Come on, Looney Tunes, let's see what you got.
How's that?
Movies are fiction, but the image of the traumatized Vietnam vet is also widely seen on TV news. A CBS documentary reported that this man, Steve Southards, had been a 16-year-old commando assassin in Vietnam, part of an elite Navy unit known as SEALs.
I was one of the highest trained, underpaid, 18 cent an hour assassins ever put together by a team of people who knew exactly what they were looking for.
But according to official Navy records, Southards was never a SEAL commando. Instead, he was a low-level technician in Vietnam. Southards told 2020 the government must have altered his files to keep his mission secret. The documentary's producers say they still believe Southards' war stories, but B.G. Burkett doesn't.
As long as the American public thinks that these bums, these frauds, are in fact the epitome and the stereotype of the Vietnam veteran, they're never going to resolve Vietnam.
So Burkett has embarked on a personal mission to go after any veteran he suspects of being a fraud. All he has to do to find the truth is to send away to this government archive in St. Louis, where military personnel records are available to the public. Of the hundreds of vets Burkett has investigated, few may be as creative as Lennox Kramer.
Lennox wrote a wonderful book called Slow Dance on the Killing Ground. And
the book is about the exploits of a Green Beret team in Vietnam. It's billed as a true personal story in which only the names have been changed. And Kramer's credentials as the author are printed right up front, his military discharge papers showing he was awarded some of the Army's highest honors. But 2020 sent away for Lennox Kramer's official Army record.
And this is what came back. Clerk typist.
That's what's on my record.
Basically no combat duty, basically all of the time spent in Germany. Aren't you Lennox Barnes Kramer, private clerk typist, Germany, and your reports about Vietnam totally fictitious?
No, sir.
Didn't the fiction continue into the book and into your mind as far as
No, sir.
your service, your records, your documents, everything?
No, sir.
But the official records that Lennox Kramer claims are mistaken show he was never a Green Beret and he never went to Vietnam. And where did Kramer write his book? Behind bars. He's serving a life sentence for murder. At the University of California, a nationally recognized lecture series brings the history of the Vietnam War to life for students too young to remember it. Nearly 1,000 students regularly pack the lecture hall to listen to highly emotional memories of combat, testimony sometimes shown nationally on cable television.
I arrived in Vietnam on the morning of May 1st, 1965, as one of a 12-man detachment of 5th Special Forces. We arrived in country sometime between 7 and 7:30 in the morning.
For a decade, Dan Geisel has described for thousands of impressionable young minds one of the most vicious battles of the war. It's known as the Battle of Dong Duy, a bloody 14-hour siege by enemy Vietnamese troops against a lightly defended Green Beret camp. Geisel talks about being shot by a young Vietnamese soldier and then firing back.
I saw the expression on his face change as the first of 50 bullets passed through his body. He was close enough that I could see chunks of flesh, bits and pieces of intestine and bone being ripped off as I continued to shoot at him.
What is most important to convey to young people about Vietnam and about the role of the fighting man there?
I think the most important thing that I do, as far as the class is concerned, is to bring a little bit of reality to it.
In the lecture in California, you're wearing the Green Beret. Is that the same one that you wore in Vietnam?
Same one.
And you won the Distinguished Service Cross?
Mm-hmm.
You wear that when you lecture?
Yes.
What was it like getting that award?
I had a hard time accepting it because I didn't see then and don't see now what happened. It was really so special to get it.
My words, he's a phony.
He wants to act like a hero. He wants to be a hero, and he's never done anything.
Jim Taylor is the real thing. He was a Green Beret medic, a certified hero of that same battle. He saved his commanding officer's life while fighting off the enemy at Dong Xuai. Taylor was invited to the White House, where he met President Johnson. For his extraordinary heroism, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. We showed Taylor a tape of Dan Geisel's lecture.
And this guy was not on the team. I knew every team member, and he wasn't there.
This was the actual camp that you were defending
Yes.
over on.
This is the district compound.
Taylor provided us with photos from the scene of the battle and of his 12-man Green Beret team.
I'm on the end over here.
Right here?
Yes. This is Lieutenant Williams kneeling on this end. Captain Stokes is on that end.
These are the commanding officers then?
Yes.
This is a photograph of the Special Forces unit that fought at Dong Xuai. You are nowhere in the photograph. See a picture here anywhere? No, I don't. Do you remember any of these men? No, I don't. Any explanation at all of why we can find no account whatsoever of your ever having received the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest award in the military?
No, I don't have any explanation at all.
What does Geisel think about Taylor, a real Green Beret, calling him a phony?
He says, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your accounts of being in this battle, his opinion, are fraudulent. That you, sir, are trying to cash in on the heroics of men who fought and died by saying you were in a battle where you never participated.
I don't know how to respond to that.
You stand by the details of your Vietnam service.
Yeah, the story that I tell is the way that I remember it.
But the way he remembers it is not the way it was, according to his military records. At the time of the Battle of Dong Xuai, Geisel was an MP, a military police officer stationed in Japan. Later, he did serve in Vietnam, but as an MP, not as a Green Beret. So how can men like Dan Geisel get uniforms and medals to make them look like real heroes? You'd think it would be next to impossible to get the genuine article, that you'd have to earn them on the battlefield. Yes, again.
There are catalogs now that you can literally, virtually any military decoration you can buy.
2020 was able to buy an assortment of medals from catalogs. A Purple Heart, awarded to soldiers wounded in action. A Bronze Star, the Silver Star, and the Distinguished Service Cross, which recognizes extraordinary heroism. How about the highest military honor in the land, the Medal of Honor? Men have paid for this one with their lives. It cost us $350.
If you let the phonies fabricate stories and claim valor that wasn't theirs, you diminish the effort of those who died.
B.G. Burkett's crusade to unmask phony veterans is having an impact. Remember those leaders of veterans groups, David Goff and John Woods? After Burkett exposed Woods to a local newspaper, Woods reportedly acknowledged he did lie about serving in Vietnam. Despite that, he was elected president of his local Vietnam veterans group. As for David Goff, who claimed he was a decorated commando assassin in Vietnam, Burkett brought his story to Reader's Digest. In April, Goff pled guilty in federal court to wearing medals he was not authorized to wear.
I thank you for coming and for sitting and listening.
It may be these men believe their own stories. It may be a way for them to get recognition. But as far as B.G. Burkett is concerned, true Vietnam veterans, especially those who died and are honored on this Texas memorial, are being dishonored by the fakes.
How long are you going to keep this up, this crusade, to find these people and identify them?
Until I get them all.
Tom can't be here tonight, but he tells us that Congress has now banned the sale of the Medal of Honor, although it is still possible to buy other medals of heroism. As for Dan Geisel, who represented himself as a former Green Beret, the University of California says that he will no longer be lecturing there. Well, next, it is the miracle of the baseball season, the story of big league umpire Steve Palermo. An act of heroism took him out of the game, but it didn't defeat his winning attitude. Bob Brown with a man for all seasons when we come back.
Once again, Hugh Downs.
Across the country, umpires are once again shouting, "Play ball." But those are words that Steve Palermo has had to give up. Palermo was one of the top big league umpires until an act of violence several years ago struck him out. In one unexpected moment, he became a hero and lost the career he loved. When we brought you his story at that time, Steve Palermo was facing an uncertain future. Has time changed his tragic situation or his outlook? Can Steve Palermo make a comeback? Well, tonight we will show you. But first, let Bob Brown tell you his story again from the beginning.
It was a walk Steve Palermo took more than 3,000 times, through a dark tunnel to a baseball diamond, where he would stand and shout, "Play ball." Now, as he learns slowly and painfully to walk again, he remembers what it was once like.
The feeling that you get walking down the stairs and out onto the field, game after game after game, is that something you get accustomed to?
I never did when I walked through the runway, whether it be in Cleveland or Boston or New York or Anaheim, Seattle, because you never take anything for granted. And especially since the accident, I don't take things for granted, especially since then.
The accident, as he calls it, is what took Steve Palermo out of a career as one of baseball's top umpires. The accident is what has left him struggling in rehabilitation, because now at the age of 43, he wants more than anything to walk on his own again, to be back on a baseball field.
It's a fight. I know I'm in for the fight of my professional life. I'm really in the fight for the quality of life that I want to try and recapture, regain, and that I once had.
The accident was a gunshot that Steve Palermo took in his back one night after he'd finished umpiring a game. He was trying to stop a mugging outside a Dallas restaurant. The story that leads to that split-second encounter between Steve Palermo and a mugger with a gun begins and ends with his love of baseball. Here in the minor leagues, where umpires often work in second jobs to support themselves, Steve Palermo served a 5-year apprenticeship between 1972 and 1977. Only 1 in 200 umpires will make it to the majors. Palermo did because he has what his fellow American League umpire Richie Garcia calls great instincts for controlling a game.
Sometimes I tell him that he sees too good. He's almost too good, and he's almost too perfect. He makes everybody else, it makes the game a little bit more challenging for everybody else.
For 14 seasons, Palermo was known as one of the best umpires in the majors for calling balls and strikes behind the plate. The bigger the game, the more he liked it. And he was a stickler for keeping order on the field.
You are the keeper of the game. You have to maintain the control out on the baseball field. You're trying to sell every call, every play, and make them believe, no, his hand just did get in on the bag before the tag was applied, so he's safe. The ball did just nip the corner. It is a strike. You've got to believe in your convictions, and they've got to believe in you. And
because if they don't,
all hell breaks loose.
And sometimes it did, especially in those classic one-on-one matchups between Palermo and the hot-tempered former manager of the Baltimore Orioles, Earl Weaver.
He said, "You're always looking for a way to try and screw me, aren't you?"
Here, Weaver is using his 2 fingers to offer an opinion on Palermo's eyesight.
You only had to point back at him with one, but what are you telling him?
I'm just telling you, you better take those fingers out of my face. You better get them out. You're fooling around with my livelihood now.
And remember when pitcher Joe Niekro tried to casually toss away that illegal scrap of sandpaper in his hip pocket in 1987? That was Steve Palermo who caught him.
That's Joe Niekro with his hands up after he had unloaded a hardware store from his 2 back pockets. He had a little sandpaper and a fingernail file. Basically, he had everything but a power chainsaw in his back pocket that night.
You ever won an argument with him?
Of course.
Oh.
He wins on the field, I win at home.
Debbie Aaron married Steve Palermo on February 2nd, 1991, after a courtship that followed the exhausting road schedule that Major League umpires have to keep during the season.
Heading off for the Rangers.
A month after the wedding, the new season began, and Steve was on the road again. On July 6, 1991, he finished an uneventful Texas Rangers home game here at Arlington Stadium, then went to unwind, as he often did, at one of his favorite Dallas restaurants, Campisi's. Among the others who were there with him, the owner, Corky Campisi, bartenders Jimmy Upton and Mark Gilliam, and former SMU and Miami Dolphin lineman Terrence Mann, now a drug rehabilitation counselor. Just after midnight, waitresses Melinda Henson and Dixie Bristow were attacked by muggers in this parking area outside the restaurant. Hearing a call for help, Palermo and his friends ran from the restaurant and fanned out to chase the mugger, who started running west along a busy thoroughfare. Finally, in this parking lot, they all converged on the suspect. Restaurant owner Campisi helped tackle him, and the others moved in to restrain him, when a car doubled back onto the scene and an accomplice of the suspect jumped out.
About that time, he swung at me and knocked me when I hit as I was going down. I could see the fire from the gun.
I said, Corky, I think I've been shot.
Terrence Mann was the first to be wounded in his neck, arm, and thigh. The fourth shot struck a wall. The fifth shot struck Steve Palermo in his back within a fraction of an inch of his spinal cord.
Did you realize what had happened when you were hit?
I could feel myself just very slowly going down on the ground. It was like in freeze frames. And I knew my legs were giving out from underneath me, and it wasn't because I was weak or nervous or fear. It's like somebody clipped the strings on a marionette.
When I first looked down at him, all I saw was from his waist down, and there was no motion. I figured the worst.
I looked up at Jimmy and I said, if I die, you make sure that you tell Debbie that I love her. He said, oh yeah, my mom and dad too, make sure. And my brothers. And it's like you're going through this laundry list of who you had to say goodbye to.
And I said, no, you're not going to die here. There's no time for it here.
The muggers were arrested not far from the scene. At the hospital where Palermo was taken, a doctor offered a grim initial prognosis. He would never walk again.
This doctor wasn't giving me a chance. He was giving me a medical opinion, but he wasn't giving me an opportunity. And after they get through with all the MRIs, all the CAT scans, all the x-rays, just take one more picture. Take a picture of a person's heart. See how big that is. Then go in there and tell them that they can't do something.
On July 15th, Steve Palermo arrived here at the Dallas Rehabilitation Institute on a stretcher, promising against the doctor's prediction that he would walk out. The problem, according to his new doctor, John Milani, was that it was impossible to tell how badly the nerves around his spinal cord were damaged. After the shooting, Palermo could barely wiggle his toes.
The most difficult question he asked me was, would he ever walk without braces completely, and would he ever get back to being an umpire? I'm not sure I ever answered him very well, but my best idea for him was that he stood a chance of being brace-free at some point in time.
Therapists here first worked on Palermo's upper body strength, so he could at least learn to bathe and dress himself again. His wife, Debbie, was there for virtually every minute of therapy.
I didn't feel it was fair that he go through this by himself. We're in this together. We had just got married 5 months previously, and through the good and through the bad. And I was going to be there by his side.
And you know she's doing it for you. She's not doing it for herself. She can walk. She doesn't have any disabilities. She's doing it for somebody who she loves and wanting them to get back to doing what they love to do. She is a champion.
In a matter of weeks, Palermo progressed remarkably, from wiggling his toes to walking with braces and crutches. But when he went back to his room at night, he was reluctant to spend any time watching baseball on television.
I really didn't watch that much baseball when I was in the hospital. It was difficult for me to watch. I should have been on the other side of the screen. And here I was laying in the bed.
In one of the most dramatic moments of last year's baseball season, Palermo was back on the other side of the screen only 3 months after he was shot. In Minneapolis, supported by leg braces and crutches, he was asked to throw out the first pitch in the first game of the World Series.
I don't know if I was physically capable of standing up and throwing a baseball about 60 feet. I didn't want to be a spectacle that would detract from the World Series itself, because the game is the most important thing. Debbie looked at me that night. She said, "Aren't you nervous? Look at all these people. I'm a nervous wreck." And I said, "Honey, this is where I belong. This is the only time that I felt comfortable since I was shot, because I was back on the baseball field again."
He had beaten that first prediction that he would never walk again, but it was still just the beginning of his comeback. In the years since that World Series appearance, Palermo has settled into a steady, plodding routine of rehabilitation, now at the Mid-America Rehabilitation Hospital in suburban Kansas City, near where he lives. The pain is still written on his face.
I'm fighting a ghost, because the doctors don't know with spinal cord injury if the nerves will ever regenerate and plug into these muscles, and it's kind of frightening because you don't know if it'll come back, but you've got to believe that it will.
Palermo has discarded not only the leg braces he used to reach the pitcher's mound, but the forearm crutches that held him up. He walks now with canes. Wherever he goes, people wish him well and say they know he'll return to umpiring someday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. The prayers are working. They are.
The words of kindness are hard for Stevie to take because all those things that people are saying about him, the good wishes and the kind words about who he is, he doesn't think along those lines. He's just an ordinary person, and there's nothing special about him.
Palermo knows that if he is ever to return to baseball again, he must walk to home plate completely unaided and stand again, back bent behind the plate for hours. In August, just a little more than a year after he was wounded, we watched Palermo try to walk with his therapist, Bobby Arp, and his wife, Debbie, by his side. For this moment, there were no ovations, no crowds. But this was as far as Palermo has walked without support of any kind since the shooting. About 100 feet. Think of what a distance that is compared to this walk only a year ago, when he returned to the field where he had umpired his last game to receive a hero's welcome and to show without words how determined he is to return to baseball. No one is predicting now that he won't make it all the way back. If you look at Major League Baseball's current roster of umpires, you will still find on that list the name Steve Palermo.
Let's imagine the best, that you'll be at the end of the tunnel again one day, looking out on the ball field. Have you imagined how your feelings might be different then from what they were the first time?
Yeah, I've imagined it a lot. Because I want to prepare myself for it, because I know it's going to happen. I don't know what the emotions will be. I know that they'll be very strong. Nobody gave me a chance this time. So it's going to taste a lot sweeter when I get back. There are very few people who honestly, actually believe that I'll return to the baseball field. And it's my family, my very close friends, and my very strong wife. So I do it for them as much as I do for myself. And I want to go back to doing what I enjoy doing, what I was halfway decent at doing. I want to get back on the field again.
Looking great. Way to go. Thank you. Thank you.
Bob, it's been 4 years since the shooting, 3 years since you did this piece, and Steve and Debbie are still together. And
Which is great, because so many times these injuries will split a marriage apart.
Will he ever be able to be an umpire again?
It is still his dream to become an umpire again. The likelihood is somewhat slimmer, because after the initial rehabilitation, the subsequent rehabilitation goes much more slowly. He is to the point now where he walks with a single cane. But to umpire again, he would have to walk unaided and be able to stand.
We have some footage of that, I think, showing
He
him.
is back in baseball now. In fact, not as an umpire, but as a color commentator and as a post-game feature reporter for the New York Yankees on the MSG network.
And how is he doing? I mean, is it a job out of sympathy, or is he doing really well?
No, I think he's great. He brings an umpire's perspective to the game, and he knows it inside and out.
Well, maybe it will be a whole new career for a very special man and his wife. Let's cheer them on today, as we have. Thank you, Bob.
Well, next, some free medical advice about the sun and your skin from our own doctor, Tim Johnson. Stay with us. Part of summer, and a good time to get out the sunblock. Dr. Timothy Johnson is here to make sure that you know there can be serious consequences to unprotected sunning, particularly now as opposed to some years in the past. Is that true?
Well, and we're talking mostly about melanomas, by far and away the most serious form of skin cancer. The incidence of melanomas has gone up 13 times since the 1930s. We think because of people being out in the sun so much more, and possibly because of the thinning of the ozone layer. So absolutely, especially if you're fair-skinned, you've got to wear sunblocks.
Boy, I wish people, especially young people, would remember that. How do you know if it's melanoma?
Well, it's tough because you look at all these little tiny things and you wonder, but the American Academy of Dermatology and other experts have a little system that they want you to remember, so-called ABCs of melanomas, meaning that when you look at melanomas, some of the pictures of them, you can see, first of all, that they are asymmetrical, that's the A. Secondly, that the borders are irregular, that's the B. And thirdly, that the colors are variegated, that is, they're not one solid color, but you have blues and blacks and browns sort of mixed in together. So you remember your ABCs when you look at these things.
So every freckle is not melanoma?
For sure not.
Right. Okay, this is important news. Thank you, Tim. We'll be right back.
And that is 2020 for tonight. Thank you for joining us.
And remember, we're in touch, so you be in touch. I'm Barbara Walters, wishing you a good and safe Memorial Day weekend.
Same here. I'm Hugh Downs.
And for all of us at 2020, see you next week, and good night.